All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Alex Acree, and I am the product manager at Aplos Software. We are a company that provides fund accounting and donor management software and services for churches and nonprofits across the United States and even the world. And my role specifically here as product manager is kind of unique in the field to where I help with support. So I help kind of train new employees on the software and teach new things about the software to our staff, as well as kind of partner with the development team on making enhancements to the software, either product, feature requests or things like that, or even bugs, fixes, that kind of thing. So I kind of bounce all over the place. So what we're going to be going over here today is navigating the accounting complexities of a large church. So that is a pretty large topic. And before I get into a lot of the detail, I'll kind of give you like an overview. So this is going to address how common church complexities can be reflected in your accounting system so that your church leadership, your elders, your board, whoever you need to report to can have the financial reporting they need to make strong financial decisions and demonstrate transparency. So at the end of the day, really the point of an accounting software for any organization, even specifically a church, is accountability. So you want to make sure that things are tracked correctly, that are taken care of efficiently, so that you can provide the right reports to your board whenever you need to. So today we're going to look at some common pitfalls of a church accounting system. We're going to look at some best practices in creating and managing your restricted funds, some popular accounting structures for churches, and then how to adapt for complex church structures such as multiple sites or separate entities like ministries or preschools. And then at the end, again, we'll have some open Q&A to go through any questions that you might have. Okay, so like I said, let's kind of start from the beginning here. So any accounting software, whether you're using Aplos or QuickBooks or anything, there's kind of three main functions, right? So in an accounting software, you're going to create your foundation, which is typically called your chart of accounts. It's your coding structure, okay? So in your coding structure, you are going to basically tell the system, here's how we spend money. So here's your expense accounts. Here's how we receive money, your income accounts. Here's the money that we have, your assets. Here's the money that we owe, your liabilities. And then here's how much money we need to have kind of set aside or tracked separately at the end of the day, which in fund accounting is called your equity or your fund balances. Now, the goal of this foundation is to provide enough detail to be specific, but also enough allow for a little bit of ambiguity to kind of have like categories, right? We're going to take a look at that in just a minute. But the whole goal of this foundation is to equip you to be able to enter transactions which occur on a daily basis. And so you can pay bills, you can receive income, you can do anything you need to do monetarily using that structure that you've created, which then at the end of the day, the eventual point is to run the reports that you need. So laying a firm foundation is key to building any sort of accounting software, especially for a church. Now, from what I've seen is most new churches, church plants, and small organizations have a very kind of streamlined, very basic need. They need to track how much money they get from donations. They need to track the few bills that they pay, including salaries and stuff. And then that's about it. As your mission grows, as more people begin to come to your church and things become a little bit more complex, let's say you hire some people, you have new staff now, and you've got different things you want to tackle, the accounting structure becomes more and more complicated because there's different things you want to track. For instance, if you wanted to launch a new location, if you want to go multi-site, then now there's two locations you need to keep track of. So now you have administrative costs, but then you also have campus costs. Or you want to run a project or a fundraiser. So you want to track, how much money did we get and spend for this fundraiser? And that went into my missions fund, but I need to track that my missions fund is separate from my general fund, which is different than my youth fund and all that kind of stuff. As you can see, it starts to get more and more complicated. Okay, so again, back to the kind of the beginning of this. The foundation is what's going to help you track that and even scale as you continue to grow. So the goal of your chart of accounts, otherwise known as a COA, is to provide you with the right information on your reports. So again, you want to have enough of the structure to be categorically accurate, but then specific too. So if you really wanted to drill into some detail on your reports, it's there. It's not too ambiguous and it's not too detailed. Okay. Kind kind of my soapbox with all of this is your chart of accounts is yours. There's 85, 86 people on this webinar right now, and each one of these churches is extremely different. You're going to have different projects. You're going to have different fundraisers. You're going to have different expenses and income and funds and grants and all kinds of stuff. Everything is going to be different. So your chart of accounts is yours. You need to own it. You need to champion it, and you need to make sense. You need it to make sense for your organization. Because again, if you're laying foundation through accounts and coding structure, and then entering transactions using those things, and then pulling reports, your board or your elders, your staff, your congregation is going to want to know, hey, how much money did I spend on this, that, and the other thing? That is what that foundation, that structure is going to provide to you. So it needs to make sense for what you want to accomplish. Okay. So here are some things that I've seen in creating a church accounting system, specifically kind of in that foundational account structure area. So overcomplicated structure. I have seen countless organizations with way too detailed of accounting structure. What that means is they might have they have an account called office supplies, and that might be, descriptive in and of itself. But then underneath that, or as a part of that, they have sub-accounts or sub-accounts, really detailed, finite things for pens and paper clips and, whatever. I've seen very, very detailed accounting structure. The problem with that is it becomes way too cumbersome and way too hard to manage very, very quickly. You might think that you want to know that much detail, but at the end of the day, you just want to know how much was spent on office supplies, not pens specifically. I've seen also kind of on the other side of that spectrum, oversimplified in structure. So they might just have, a category set up called administrative expenses, and everything falls within that category. Now, the benefit is that is accurate. It is an administrative expense, but if you want to kind of see how much was spent on, cleaning supplies versus office equipment, that kind of detail is lost because the category is way too broad. Right. So you can go way too detailed. You can go way too broad. We're going to take a look at some examples of that here later on today as well. I've also seen too many funds. So I'm going to just assume that most of us are familiar with what a fund is. A fund is something that is specific, within your church that needs to be tracked separately. So it has its own income. It's got its own expenses. It could even have its own debt. It is like its own little mini thing that you're tracking within the larger total. So for instance, for a church, common fund structure is you have like a general fund where you pay your bills. That's where salary and rent and keeping the lights on and most donations go into. It's kind of just an administrative general fund. And then you have this thing called a missions fund. And so that's for, outreach that you want to do, either local or global. People might donate specifically to that. So that's kind of its own little thing over here. And then you have a building fund. Same idea. You want to receive donations to it. It's got its own expenses, so you kind of want to differentiate it from everything else. So you set up a fund for it. Essentially, if you ever need to answer the question, how much money do I have set aside for blank? The blank is probably a fund that you want to track. So too many funds. I've seen that as well. I've seen a fund for, here is my office supplies fund. Okay, well that might be an expense category that you want to track, and you might even want to see some detail there. But to be a fund, it might be unnecessary because people aren't going to donate to your office supplies fund, right? That's just an account group. That is just an account expense category that you want to track. So I've seen people create funds for very, very granular and specific things. The problem with that is if you kind of divvy your funds up, that is allocating money to a very specific purpose. So for instance, if you said, well, I want to designate, $1,000 for carpet, church carpet. I want to redo the church carpet in the sanctuary. So we're going to put $1,000 towards that. Well, that might be a project that is down the road a couple of years. So now you've got $1,000 that you actually have right now locked away for something that will not be present for the next couple of years. So it could be beneficial. You might want to have multiple categories or funds set up to track, the separation of money, but it can also, like your account structure, get very, very detailed and lock your money up in areas that, might need to be spent in different ways, at least in the short term. I've also seen asset accounts set up for funds. And this is typically because of a lack of fund accounting software. Again, we provide fund accounting software. A non-fund accounting software like QuickBooks doesn't allow you to track those separate funds. What they do is they have you set up like workarounds in your chart of accounts, like creating a separate bank account for each fund. Well, the problem is you only have one bank account at the bank. You have a checking account. So if you have, 5 different asset accounts set up in your accounting structure and have your money, designated for each fund within that, well, then, the total of those 5 accounts is actually what's in your checking. And so you can't really get an accurate picture of that. And then if you want to do a bank reconciliation, that's even harder because now you're doing a bank rec across multiple asset accounts when it's really just one. So the asset setup for funds, inaccurate bank account to asset count, that is something that is indicative of a non-fund accounting software accounting system. Next one here, doing things the way that you're supposed to do them from a non-church source. This kind of goes back to my little soapbox there a couple minutes ago. Your chart of accounts is unique to you. That is something that you need to champion. And so if you, at any point in your setup, Googled, what should my chart of accounts be? Chances are you got something that is way too specific and not direct enough for what you want to accomplish. It might have given you an idea of how to structure income and expense accounts and that kind of thing, but if you just kind of copied and pasted that structure, say from the IRS or something, my bet is that you've got a lot of accounts hanging around that don't make sense, have never been used, and that you're afraid to delete because you're not sure if you're going to need them one day. So that's something I've seen as well. The last 2 here, managing multiple entities in one chart of accounts. Typically, your chart of accounts is for each unique entity, operating entity. So the church has its own EIN, it's its own entity, so it has its own chart of accounts. Let's say that your church wants to start a preschool. Your preschool is going to have its own, status and EIN number, that kind of thing. So you create that. Well, that, because it's its own thing, needs its own chart of accounts. If you try to manage both of those within one chart of account structure, it could again become very complicated. So now when you have office supplies, you now have office supplies for 2 different entities. So how do you track that? You could say, well, I can just create, more accounts, but then you become the overcomplicated structure of now I have, 1,000 expense accounts, and it's just unwieldy. It's just hard to manage. So common rule of thumb is if it's a different entity, have a different chart of accounts. And then using a non-fund accounting software, kind of going back to the funds and bank account thing, using an accounting software that is not designed for fund accounting, which is something that churches and nonprofits need, is going to present some problems, mainly with reporting. You're not going to be able to get the reports that you need from a non-fund accounting software. Right. So let's look at some best practices in creating and managing your accounts here in your restricted funds. So the IRS pools funds, or what they call net assets, into 3 categories: unrestricted, temporarily restricted, and permanently restricted funds. What that really means is that you've got money, right? You've got money, and some of it is unrestricted, so you can use it for whatever you want. Some of it is temporarily restricted, so it's kind of set aside for a period of time, but then it's unlocked or you can use it for something else. And then there's permanently restricted, so you have a donation that is specifically for this thing, and so you always need to use it for this thing. That is a permanently restricted fund. I wouldn't worry too much about categorizing your funds in those 3 specific categories. It's mainly for you to just keep in mind that I have money that is free, I have money that is bound forever, and then I have money that is, maybe wanted to use for something specific, but we can really use it for anything we want if we need to. Okay, so don't worry about too much about those buckets. Funds are tracked the same no matter what. So a fund, again, is kind of its own unique thing. It's got money coming in, money coming out, money that is collectible to it, money that's owed. So really, if you look at the 5 different types of accounts: asset, liability, income, expense, and equity, all of those are present for a fund. So it's like its own little mini organization within your larger total. Okay, so like I said a couple minutes ago, those funds are unique to you. Each of your churches are going to have different fund needs. The only real common general theme that I see throughout most of them is a general fund, and that's kind of the unrestricted category of, I can spend my money however we need to for bills and salaries and whatever. So it's just kind of the catch-all, if you will, just general fund. And then typically a missions fund and a building fund as well. So there's a little graphic there. So in a general accounting system, you don't have a fund, you just have one, pool. It's all income goes into it, all expenses come out of it. But with fund accounting, you can kind of split the pie a little bit. So you've got your total, so you can see there's $10,000 in my checking account. But you can also see out of that 10,000, 3,000 is general, 3,000 is missions, 4,000 is building, right? So you can kind of break it up. Some other things that you can do in managing your funds and your accounting structure is using account groups to organize your funds into larger buckets that you want subtotaled. So here's kind of a workaround. Like I said earlier, some people might want to do really detailed funds. So let's say that you have a missions fund, right? But your missions department goes on missions trips. So you want to create a mission trip fund for every mission trip that you do. Well, that might be a good solution for the first 2 or 3, but once you have 15 mission trips happening throughout the year, that's a lot of funds you need to keep track of. So one thing you could do is create account groups to kind of help you organize this. So you can create let's say you can create a group for missions funds, right? So that's a group. So that is the kind of global category where these equity accounts will be stored. And then in there, you can create the individual funds that you need. So one for each missions trip. So you can have a fund set up for each missions trip. So you can, keep track of each one, how much it has. But then on your report, you can subtotal by the missions trips group. So that will tell you, here's the individual balances for each one of my funds, the trips, and then here's my total missions budget, right? So some grouping works well in expense accounts and income accounts and stuff too. So here's some popular accounting structure for churches. So accounts, again, are kind of the categories that you use in the transactions. So for income and expenses, this is where I would record that I went to Home Depot and I bought, equipment, right? So equipment is your expense account that you choose. So I've got an example here on the right. So kind of a basic group is you just have office supplies and that's it. So office supplies, let's say you go to Walmart and you go to Best Buy and you go to Office Depot. Those are all 3 different things that you're using for the office, but they might be different types of purchases, but you categorize them all to office supplies. So in that example, it might be a little bit too basic, just kind of depends on what you need. So an example of what a growing organization or what a little bit more detail looks like is right below that. That group called growing has office supplies as an account, but then underneath that, kind of indented, is what you call a sub-account. So those sub-accounts are a part of the parent account. They can be subtotaled on a report, or you can see the total breakout. So let's say I went to, and one of them I did print, like a print copy expense. One of them was maintenance and cleaning. The other one was snacks and beverages. So I can use those specific accounts to track the type of office supplies that I'm buying. And then if at the end of the day I wanted to see a total, what's the total amount that I've spent on, say, office supplies, I can condense those and all 3 of them go up into the office supplies parent account. So it provides a little bit more detail. The too granular one is the example of getting way too detailed. So here is office supplies, and then underneath that you've got pencils, paper, staples, stapler, that kind of thing. That is an example of going way too detailed. Again, it's going to be unwieldy. So at the end of the day, if I want to see, hey, what's the total office supplies? The basic would work. If I want to see, I really want to see how much money we've been spending on snacks as opposed to actual things that we need for the office. That might be the middle example there. So you might want to kind of, break those out a little bit. And your chart of accounts can also change over time too. So you can start with the office supplies for 1 year, and then at the end of a month or a year or so, you go, well, this is helpful, but really I want to see a little bit more. So go create a couple more accounts and then use those. And then if you realize that, well, we didn't use all 4 of them that we created, we really just used 3. So just delete the other one or hide it or make it inactive or whatever. So your chart of accounts will grow with you. It will change depending on what you're doing. Just be sensitive to it, make it your own. Again, so sub-accounts can break out into more minute details. We talked about funds, and then account groups we kind of talked about a little bit. Account groups, here's an expense example here. So in account group structure, you can have a group, and then within the group you have accounts, and then within the accounts you have sub-accounts. Okay, so the sub-accounts roll up into the parent account, but then all of the parent accounts roll up into the group that they're in. So for instance, I can have a group called salaries. In salaries, I can have, payroll expense, and I can have, the different payroll categories that I have there. Each one will roll up into the group of salaries, so I can see what did I spend total on salaries this month or year or quarter, whatever you're looking at. So the groups and accounts and sub-accounts, again, are all kind of divvied up into what you want to track. So I would say if it's just kind of a category that you want to know a total for, probably be a group. If you want to know kind of a detailed structure, then that would be the account. And then if you really wanted to dive into some really specific detail, that would be a sub-account. But first, I'd start with group and account and see how far you can go. So in Aplos, we have other things called tags. Other softwares might have equivalents to this. In QuickBooks, it's called classes. You can have a certain type of class on a transaction. But what a tag is in Aplos is it's not a fund. So it doesn't have its own balance, right? It's not something that's permanently restricted, temporarily restricted, or unrestricted. It's not a fund. It's also not an account. So it's not something that I see on a report. It's not a category, right? It's not office supplies. It's not contributions income. It's not accounts payable. It's not an account. So what is a tag? A tag is anything else. Anything that's not a fund, it's not an account, but you want to track it for whatever reason. We have multiple layers of tags, and they can be customized and change the name. But one example is a multi-site example. So let's say you have multiple locations for your church. One entity, multiple spots. The church that I go to here in Fresno, California is a multi-site church. So they have their, operational, administrative, they have their staff and their kind of operational stuff. And then they have their campuses. So they've got three different campuses now. So each one has its own income, its own revenue, its own expenses that are allocated towards it. So a location would be something that you could set up as a tag. So as they are entering transactions, they would type in, this is office supplies. This is my pens office supplies expense account. This is going out of my general fund, and I'm going to use the tag for my North campus. So now on a report, I can run an income statement or a transaction list report, and I can see how much money have I spent on all these categories within this time frame for this specific campus. So it allows you to drill in and kind of get a little bit more information from your reports for something like a location. The kind of categories that we start you with tags are projects, fundraisers, and departments, and then custom. So 4 layers. And again, you can rename them. So you can rename it locations. But same thing with like a fundraiser. So let's say you're throwing a fundraiser. You want to track how much money came in for it. You want to track how much money you spent for it. At the end of the day, it doesn't hold a balance. It's not its own thing. And you don't want to create an account for it because you don't want to muddle your account structure. But you want to track how well it did. Okay. So you would use a tag for something like that. So you'd have a fundraisers tag category like we do in the screenshot there on the right. And then you'd create a tag called, Harvest Festival, and that would be what you throw in the fall. So then again, for every transaction that comes through, you pick your account, you pick your fund, and you pick your tag. So then on your reports, you can run like an income statement and show me how much money did we make on the Harvest Festival. This much money came in, this much money went out for whatever categories. So at the end of the day, it was, profitable or it wasn't profitable, whatever. But it can help you make decisions on how well something's doing without muddling your account structure or being like a fund that is just kind of forever there holding its own balance. Okay. So there's the example. So tags are perfect for locations, departments, fundraisers, projects, trips, staff, anything. Really just keep in mind any kind of category that you want to track, that you want to see some reports on, track the profitability of, but it's a kind of a temporal thing. A tag would be perfect for that. Okay, so one of the last things I want to talk about here is how to adapt for complex church structures. So multi-site churches is an example that we just used, so you can use tags for that. But now for multiple entities. So let's say that you are a church that has a church, and you have a preschool, and you have a missions like outreach entity, or like a thrift store or something like that. You've got a bunch of irons in the fire. You got different stuff going on. These are all different entities. So like I said earlier, you don't want to consolidate those things into one chart of accounts, because then it's going to be impossible for you to run the reports that you need. Everything's going to be muddled. There's multiple bank accounts. There's different, reporting, tax returns that are needed. It's complicated. So for each entity, each unique organization, you're going to want its own set of books. So Aplos has a tool called Oversight that allows you to manage multiple sets of books and can consolidate them if needed as well. So let's take a look at an example. So again, if any entity has a different EIN, you want to have a different set of books. So using Oversight, you can log in to one software, and then you can have the different organizations listed there, like I do in the screenshot to the right. So here's ABC Church, here's the Animal Shelter, here's Celebrate Region, Downtown Church. So these are the different entities that I kind of have oversight over. By clicking on accounting, I would then dive into that specific organization's chart of accounts and Aplos account. So you can enter all their transactions, you can keep track of them, you can run their reports, and then come back up to your oversight and then dive into the next one. So oversight would be a great tool for managing, like the earlier example of a church that has a preschool, missions department, and the church itself. Each one needs its own separate books. If you ever wanted to run a total report and show me, out of these three organizations, what's the total income, total expense, and show me all their categories, for whatever reason. You can also run consolidated reports for those as well. This is more of a nonprofit subject, but we do have a couple of clients that are like multi-chapter organizations. So they have one EIN, they have like a headquarters, but then they have multiple locations, chapters in different cities, but they have one like chart of accounts that spans the whole thing. They're just kind of broken up. They're separated by geography. So what they do is they have oversight, and they have each chapter set up as its own entity in Aplos. So they all manage their same books, income and expenses and debt and money and everything like that. They all use the same chart of accounts. So then at the end of the year, when that organization needs to file their tax return, they have 50 different chapters, and they run a consolidated income statement and balance sheet for all of them. It populates all of their info onto one report, all the figures, so that they can file one joint tax return for all of their chapters. So that's an example. Another example that we have kind of more in the church realm, kind of in the mission field, is we have an organization that uses oversight for missions. They do missions stuff in multiple countries. And with different countries comes different operating currencies, which comes conversion rates, right? So what they do is they have their headquarters here in America, California. So they track their accounting for the headquarters, but then for each country that they service, that they have kind of a headquarters in, like a little base, they have a separate entity set up for that. And that entity in Aplos operates in its own currency. So their Spanish have their pesos. And so they would track all of the income and expenses and all that in the currency of which they're operating. Then at the end of the year, when they want to run the consolidated report, they would apply an exchange rate in the software to each of those organizations there. So for instance, if like the ABC Church operated in pesos, you would change that to that, apply the exchange rate, and then run the consolidated report so that you still have consolidated numbers and it's all translated into US currency, even if it's operated in something different. Okay. So again, oversight is a great tool for managing multiple organizations. If you have multiple entities or multiple chapters, things like that. I can even see it done for multi-site too. Multi-site you can accomplish using the tag structure that we talked about earlier. But if you wanted like its own, let's say if you wanted each campus to have its own staff access, its own bookkeeper, it's its own thing. You're kind of a part of the global, the larger church, but each campus is almost like its own operating entity. Then you could do oversight for that as well. Each account would have its own users, it would have its own permissions, it'd have its own thing. And then you can run kind of the consolidated, or the bookkeeper or the people of the elder board in charge of all of them would be able to log in, dive into each one and see kind of the separate financials, but then you can also run the consolidated as well. All right. So that has been a lot of information from me. So kind of as a recap, let me go back up to the structure here. So today we kind of looked about these different things here. So common pitfalls. So you can be overcomplicated. You can be undercomplicated. You can have too many accounts set up. You can have too many funds. You can have too little funds. You could be not using the right software. All of those things would be barriers for you to grow in your accounting structure for your church. So that's some common pitfalls. Best practices, you want to own your chart of accounts. So you want to have some ownership over it. You want it to make sense for your organization. So use account groups, accounts, sub-accounts, funds, tags, all of those categories that a software would offer you, a software like Aplos would offer you. Use all of those wisely. Consult people that you think would have some insight to it. Even use it for a little bit and just see what works. If it's too complicated or if it's undercomplicated, then change it. It's yours. It can grow or shrink however you need it to. Okay. And then popular accounting structure for churches, again, using the tags, groups, accounts, sub-accounts. You can have, larger categories that have detail, which even have more detail if you really want it to. And then you can use oversight for something like managing multiple entities or multiple chapters within an organization as well. Okay. So now let's open it up for some question and answer time. I'm sure that there are a number of questions already. I'm going to kind of minimize this because my menus get weird having these things open, but I'm going to mute myself for just a couple of minutes here and then come back and answer some questions. So feel free to shoot those through. With the remainder of our time, we'll answer some questions, but then if I don't get to your question or if we don't have time, then I'll be sure to send a follow-up email to you once we've concluded for the day as well. Okay, so I'm going to mute myself for just a minute and then we'll go from there. Okay, let's take a look at some questions here. We have plenty of time, so if you have questions, feel free to shoot those through, and I will continue to answer them until there are no more. So for the first one here, can we have these slides emailed to us after the presentation? Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is once we've concluded for the day, this is all being recorded as well, so that might answer somebody else's question there. So this will be recorded. It is recorded. We'll polish it up, we'll put it online, and then once it's available to watch at any time, we'll email all of you so that you have it for later access if you want to go back and watch it. And I can also email you a copy of the slides if you're interested too. So Lori, for sure, if anybody else is interested in that, let me know and I'll send you a copy. All righty. So let's see. So please define large church. That is a fantastic question. So large church, it's really, it's hard to categorize it in a very clean and concise way. The easiest way to classify a large church is by revenue, money, right? So if you operate in, the hundreds of thousands, you'd be considered a large church. I do believe that there's some sort of cutoff to be recognized as a mega church in the United States as opposed to a non-mega church. I don't exactly know what those figures are, but large, in my opinion, is complexity. You can have millions of dollars worth of assets, and you can have a very simple structure. You don't do a lot, you just have a lot of money. So I wouldn't necessarily classify you as a large church, even though you have a lot of money. Some people would. I just think large means a little bit more complex. So large could even be you don't have a ton of money, but let's say you have a lot of funds or you want to accomplish a lot of things. You have a lot of, if you will, irons in the fire, right? So you have a lot of needs. That to me would be more indicative of large. Hopefully all of those things are funded so that you can kind of match the income with the complexity. But that's at least how I would define it, Stephen. I don't know if that helps, but let me know if that makes sense. All right. Let's see what else we got. Can your software handle payroll in 4 different states easily? Well, the answer to that is yes, in a way. Aplos doesn't have a native payroll solution, but we do have a partnership with Sage Payroll, and they accommodate for every state. So if you are interested in payroll, we can point you their way. Once you have an account set up with them, they can provide a number of services. They can either provide just software so you can go in and manage things yourself, or they can also kind of provide a service there as well if you wanted to outsource your payroll. But either way, whichever route you end up taking with Sage, you can get an export of your payroll runs and then import that into Aplos to keep everything up to date. So we specialize in kind of the fund accounting, donor management area, They specialize in the payroll. So yeah, we can point you their way, Greg. What is the cost associated with transitioning to a solution like Aplos? That again depends. We have a number of, we just have three kind of basic like accounting packages at the moment. We have a starter, standard, and advanced. So it kind of just depends on what functionality you need. Again, it wouldn't really be revenue size. We can accommodate for any revenue size in any of those three buckets. It's just what do you need? So if it's basic accounting, it could be starter, which starts at $25 per month. If you need accounting and contribution management, so tracking donations and issuing contribution statements, that starts at $40. And then we have an advanced, which starts at $120. So it includes the contributions management, includes the basic accounting, and also includes the advanced accounting with things coming like fixed assets and allocations and that kind of thing coming pretty soon. And in fact, I'll just move on to this last slide here. So if you wanted to reach us, then our Twitter handle here is @Aplos_software. And then you can also use the hashtag Aplos webinar for any kind of social media presence. And then you can also visit aplos.com for more information as well if you wanted to take a look at what we offer there. Okay, is a payroll tax service offered to Aplos clients that maintains the various changes in payroll taxes for federal and state? Yeah, so that Sage Payroll partnership is what you're looking for there, Lorraine. So that would, they are the payroll masters over there at Sage, so feel free to use them. They would be able to work with you in all those changing rates and keep everything up to date. And then again, all those things would be imported into Aplos so that everything stays up to date. Okay. Is there a legal responsibility associated with permanently restricted funds? That is also a fantastic question, Carol. And the short answer is yes. I don't necessarily know what the ramifications are, the legal repercussions for not doing that. But what I do know is that if you allow someone to give you money designated for something and you accept that money, you are now responsible to spend that money as designated, right? So, to use an example, let's say someone says, here is $1,000 and I want you to spend it specifically on blank, carpet, communion crackers. It could be anything. If you accept that $1,000 with the acknowledgement that, yes, I will spend your money for said purpose, then that money is now considered a permanently restricted fund because you have accepted it and it has been allocated for something that is very specific. Let's say that you don't have enough money to make rent one month or pay your salaries or whatever. There's going to be this $1,000 sitting in your bank account that is tagged or allocated to a fund that you can't touch because it's permanently restricted. So that gets into some opinions on how to, what money should you accept or how should you do that. For that kind of thing, I would maybe reach out to some peers, some other fellow church leaders and see what would be the best practice there, or we can communicate via email. But yes, if you receive a designated contribution and you accept it, then you are legally kind of obligated to spend it that way. I have heard of some use cases of, let's say someone donated, let's say you're doing a building campaign, right? So you want to raise money to do an improvement to your building. Okay, and you project that it's going to cost $100,000. So you receive donations. Let's say you get $100,000. Let's say you only spend 80 of that. So at the end of the day, you have $20,000 that people have donated to you specifically for the building improvement, but you don't need it. I have heard of cases of a temporarily restricted fund being used in the communication to those people of saying, here's how much we want to raise. Any surplus that we raise will be rolled back into the general fund. So that way the person knows, all right, I'm donating to the building thing. If you can accomplish that with less money than what we contribute, then I'm fine just having that kind of roll into your general fund. But again, without that stipulation, then you can run into the same example of, hey, I donated to the building thing. I didn't want you to pay for whatever with it. I wanted that to go to the building. So a temporarily restricted fund can have some kind of specific rule conditions to it, if you will. I have also heard of some stuff happening where, let's say that designation wasn't made. Somebody donates to something specific, but then time passes and you realize I'm never going to use this money on this thing. So then they contacted the donor and said, hey, back in, 1492, you gave us money for this, and things have changed. We don't need it for this. So if you're okay with it, we're going to assign this money to this other thing. And if they accept it, then fine. They can also say, nope, I donated to you for a specific purpose. So just kind of be prepared for that as well. I've heard of all of those things happening. So let's see. I don't think I have a clear understanding on fund accounting software. Apologies ahead of time for asking a question you've covered. Let's see. I thought you could set up funds for related income and expenses. I've created funds for our church's marketing department, business department, IT department. Is that not a good idea because it helps me to put aside income and department-related expenses? Yeah, so this is a good question. Very good question. So this kind of goes back to the structure thing. So having a fund creates a bucket or a pool or a designation of money. It's got its own balance. So for something like your IT department, you know that you're going to pay, let's say, $100 a month on IT stuff. So if someone's going to come out, make sure your phones are working, make sure the internet doesn't crash, that is $100 per month. So you know that in the year, you're going to spend $1,200 on this. So you want to kind of set money aside for that. In a lot of structures, doesn't necessarily warrant a fund. That is more of just a budget, right? So a fund is more of like a missions fund, missions department. Those are things that could receive specific contributions, could raise its own money, could have its own debt, could have its own expenses. It's like its own little island in your ocean. With something like IT or marketing department, those kinds of things, a lot of what you're looking for could be accomplished through just a budget, just an allocation of here's my IT expense category or group or whatever, and here's my total budget for those expense categories for the year. Again, you can also use things like tags to do a department. So yeah, I guess the short answer is a fund is not always necessary to do that, but it kind of just depends on what your needs are. Megan, if you want more information on that and maybe some more specific help as well, then feel free to reach out to us, to the support. Our support is free, so we can help you kind of work through that and kind of figure out, hear about what you do and what could be more beneficial for you, and then work with you on a better setup. Yes, Michael, the webinar was recorded, so we'll have that online here in the next day or two, and then I'll send that link out to everyone once we're done, and you can watch the first 15 or 20 minutes or so. Okay, another payroll question. So again, does your software handle payroll for ordained ministers? Yeah, Sage should be able to handle all those categories. So I would contact them if you have any payroll related questions. Again, they partner with us, so the information can be kept up to date, but they are kind of the payroll masters over there. Yep, so we'll send over the recording. Let's see, emailed copy, yep. Okay, so Greg had a follow-up. He said, I think megachurch is defined as above 2,000 in attendance. So back to that kind of what is considered a large church, that could be an answer for you as well. Let's see, do you provide any charts or graphs that are not available on Excel? I think the answer to that, Stephen, is how good are you at Excel? So we do have some charts and graphs in the software, not on the reports, but you can see that screenshot right there. That is what we call our dashboard. So there are some charts and graphs and income and things like that there. All of those are able to be done in Excel, but we have those kind of as a quick snapshot already for you when you log into the software. But for reporting, our reporting is strictly financial. It's just numerical reporting. So here's your category, here's the amount. You can do lots of customization to it, but there are no graphs or charts on our reports. But all of those can be exported to Excel if you wanted to create something off of that as well. Are you developing a payroll product? Not at the moment, and not that we have any plans for. That's why we have the integration with Sage. They are great with that, as are other payroll solutions. We have just decided to focus more specifically on the accounting software and donor management software side of things. So I don't see us making a payroll software here anytime soon. Does your software integrate with CCB, Church Community Builder? Yeah, great question. We are currently working on that integration right now. We have a great relationship with them, and we are both companies are very excited about offering that. So yeah, I'm assuming I'm gonna call the shot and say by the end of September we'll have that integration live. I don't. It could be a little bit longer, but our developers are currently working on that right now. It just kind of would depend on the release schedule on when that would be available. But yeah, we are very excited to partner with them. So that's coming. What is the presenter's contact info? So my contact info, it's not on here. You can reach me. Our number, let's just type this in for you here. Twitter, so let's say phone. Our phone number here is 888-274-1316, and my extension specifically is 113 if you want to reach me, or my, my email here is just alex@aplos.com. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them for you. Yeah. Let's see. I wonder if the person who gave to the fund for a restricted purpose is no longer the church. Yeah, good question. So what if someone who gave a restricted donation is no longer at the church? Maybe they passed away. Maybe they just moved on. Either way, they're not around, but you have money from them that's allocated to a purpose. For that type of thing, because that gets into kind of the legal restrictions and ramifications of that, I would recommend contacting a CPA for that kind of authority, just to make sure all the T's are dotted and the I's are crossed, just to make sure that you're not doing something that could come back to you. I would contact an accounting professional on that one. Let's see. It looks like Aplos looks a lot like QuickBooks Online. Are you connected? We are not connected, completely separate. QuickBooks has their business accounting, and then we focus on nonprofit and church accounting. So completely different. Our softwares may look a little similar. Most accounting softwares online kind of have the same style going on these days. Left navigation, charts and graphs, and that kind of thing. So, but no, not related. Let's see. Are you all aware of the church software management system called Church Teams? If yes, are you planning on any kind of plugin or interface with them? I am not familiar with them, Joseph, so thank you for passing them along. Church Teams, okay? We do have an integration team here at Aplos that focuses on making those integrations. So I will pass that along to them, and then we can look at what that would take to get an integration going with them. Yeah. Does Aplos integrate with Planning Center, Pico Planning Center Online? We do not at the moment, but we have reached out to them, and the relationship does seem like it's got good potential. So I think our integrations team will have something with them down the road. I don't exactly know when, but they are on our list. All right. And then how expensive are the fees for Sage Payroll? I believe they start at $50 per month, and that's including the first 10 employees. And I think that also assumes that you're going to be doing the work manually. If you wanted their service to kind of outsource your payroll, there would be some additional fees. And if you have more than 10 employees, it's a little bit more as well. I don't know exactly what their fee structure is, but I do know that it starts at 50, and that's for the first 10 employees. And then can you recommend any other resources where a new administrator with little accounting experience can receive additional training? Yeah, just not to be shorthanded about it, but I think that a great resource for you is us, Paul. We provide the software. We also provide accounting services. So if you guys are looking for someone to take over your books or do a certain portion of your books or just kind of provide some sort of like oversight and review, we can handle that as well. But if you just want somebody to teach you, I just want to learn. I want to learn about fund accounting. I want to learn on how to manage my church better. I want to learn about it. We provide a lot of those resources. So in the accounting realm, we've got a lot. I have what we call Academy course written on how to kind of create an accounting structure for your church or nonprofit. So kind of the basics of fund accounting. We also have a lot on donor management and kind of donor relational type things as well. So yeah, I think that we would be a great resource for you. Our support is free, and a lot of those resources are online. So if you visit aplos.com, in fact, let me just show you what that looks like here. So if you go to our website, then down here at the bottom, you can get to our support center. You can also go to Academy and see previous webinars. So feel free to access those resources down there at the bottom if you'd like to learn more about us. All Let's see. Do you have an AR for creating statements and aging reports? Yes, we do have accounts receivable management, so you can create the invoices, track who's paid you, how much they owe you, and run an aging report as well. And then how integrated is your online payment solution? You might need to give me a little bit more information there, Kristen. We are completely online. Aplos is a 100% online software, and we have integrations with a number of donor management, church management platforms, as well as Sage Payroll. But then our accounting software just by itself is very built out as well. We have accounts payable, accounts receivable, budgeting, check printing, tags, budgeting by fund, those kinds of things. And we also have a 15-day free trial. So if you guys are curious on how Aplos would work for you, feel free to register for a free trial at our homepage there, just aplos.com. Again, our support is free. So if you have questions on how to get set up or how to go about things, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to help you. And so hopefully that answers your question there, Christian. And that is actually the last question that I see. So I'm going to go ahead and just close it up for today. But if there are other questions that come through, or if you have anything else, feel free to email me, and then I will do my best to answer everything for you. Sorry, I just had one question come through. Do you have a plan for disaster recovery? What is your backup plan for all of our data? That can also be found on our website at the very bottom. Where is it? Security, right here at the end of products here, this little thing here, security. So that goes through our procedures there. But again, if you have more questions, let us know, and we can get you a more detailed answer. So thank you, everyone, for showing up today. It was a lot of information, a lot of good content there. And so if you have any questions, again, let us know. If you would like to reach us, you can use my info here, 888-274-1316, extension 113, or email me at alex@aplos.com, or just interchange Alex with support@aplos.com if you just want to ask some questions and get some help, maybe getting started with a free trial. You can also reach us on Twitter using the at Aplos_software, or the hashtag Aplos webinar if you want to give us some feedback and let us know how we did. Okay, thank you all again for showing up. Appreciate you taking the time, and we'll talk to you soon.